I pulled into the Pine Ridge Inn's gravel parking lot, my old Honda sputtering to a stop beneath the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. The car was packed with everything I still owned after being evicted from my apartment in Denver. Not much, just some clothes, tools, and a few personal items. The inn looked exactly like the pictures online, a large, 3-story wooden structure with a wraparound porch and green trim, nestled against a backdrop of pine trees and mountain peaks. I grabbed my backpack and headed toward the entrance, taking in the quiet. After months of city noise, the mountain silence felt almost unnatural. The only sounds were the wind through the pines and the crunch of gravel under my boots. The front door opened with a creak, revealing a lobby with wooden floors, a stone fireplace, and rustic furniture that looked like it had been there for decades. A middle-aged man stood behind the front desk, his attention fixed on some paperwork. "Hello," I called out. "I'm Phoenix Foster. I'm here about the maintenance position." The man looked up, revealing a weathered face with piercing blue eyes. Lines etched around his eyes and mouth told stories of years spent outdoors. "Foster, right on time." He came around the desk, extending a calloused hand. "Chad Peterson, I own the place." His handshake was firm, almost crushing. Up close, I noticed the gray streaking his brown hair and the way his blue eyes seemed to study me, as if assessing whether I'd be worth the trouble. "Thanks for the opportunity," I said. "I appreciate you taking me on short notice." Chad grunted in acknowledgement. "Let me show you around. You'll need to know the layout if you're going to be handling maintenance." He led me through the inn with brisk efficiency, pointing out guest areas, supply closets, and maintenance access points. The place was bigger than it looked from outside, with 2 wings of guest rooms, a dining area, and various utility spaces. "We're at about half capacity most weeks," Chad explained as we walked. "Busier in summer and during ski season. You'll be responsible for general repairs, trail maintenance, and helping with heavy lifting when needed." I nodded, trying to commit the layout to memory. "Seems straightforward enough." "There's nothing straightforward about Pine Ridge," Chad said, his tone making me glance at him. But he continued walking without elaboration. We headed up a narrow staircase at the back of the building to the 3rd floor, which Chad explained housed the staff quarters. "This is you," he said, opening a door to reveal a small but clean room with a twin bed, dresser, desk, and a window overlooking the forest behind the inn. Bathrooms shared down the hall. Meals are provided in the staff dining room. Your schedule will be posted weekly. I set my backpack on the bed. The room was basic but comfortable, certainly better than my car, which had been Plan B. Chad reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "One more thing. These are the rules." He handed it to me with a gravity that seemed excessive. "Follow them. They'll keep you alive." I took the paper, unfolding it to find a typed list of 5 numbered rules. 1. Never respond to voices calling for help from unmarked trails. 2. Never give directions to anyone you encounter on the trails. 3. Never accept invitations to explore with guests or strangers. 4. Never venture beyond the marked trail boundaries. 5. If walking after sunset, never look behind you, no matter what you hear. I looked up at Chad, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I forced a smile. "Seems a bit dramatic, don't you think?" Chad's expression remained stone serious. "You can think whatever you want, just follow the rules." I nodded, tucking the paper into my pocket. "Sure thing, boss." "Get settled in. Sophia will meet you in the maintenance shed in an hour to go over your specific duties." With that, Chad turned and left, closing the door behind him. I sat on the bed, pulling out the rules paper again. It had to be some kind of local color thing, a bit of mountain folklore to intrigue the tourists. Maybe they sold t-shirts with the rules in the gift shop. I chuckled to myself, then started unpacking my few belongings. An hour later, I made my way to the maintenance shed behind the inn. It was a solid structure, well organized, with tools hanging on pegboards and supplies neatly labeled on shelves. A woman about my age was checking inventory on a clipboard when I walked in. She had brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, with freckles scattered across her nose and cheeks. "You must be Phoenix," she said, offering a warm smile. "I'm Sophia Hoffman, head of housekeeping." "Nice to meet you," I replied, shaking her hand. "Chad asked me to go over your duties with you." She handed me a set of keys. "These will get you into all the maintenance areas and supply rooms." Sophia walked me through the daily and weekly tasks, from checking the heating system to clearing the marked trails. She was thorough and friendly, answering my questions about equipment and procedures. "So, how long have you worked here?" I asked as we went through the tool inventory. "About 5 years now," she said. "It's a good place to work if you don't mind the isolation." "And the dramatic rules," I added with a smile. Sophia's expression changed, her smile fading. "The rules are important," she said, her tone suddenly serious. "Right, they'll keep me alive," I said, making air quotes. Chad certainly sold it well. Sophia was quiet for a moment, then changed the subject. "The heating system in the East Wing has been acting up. That should probably be your first priority tomorrow." I wanted to press her about the rules, but her closed-off expression made it clear the topic was finished. We spent the next hour going through maintenance procedures until Sophia checked her watch. "I need to get back to housekeeping. You should meet Felix at the front desk. He handles all the guest complaints that might require your attention." I followed her back to the main building, where she introduced me to Felix Clark, the front desk manager. He was a well-dressed man in his 40s with reading glasses and a neatly trimmed beard. "Welcome to Pine Ridge," Felix said, shaking my hand firmly. "How are you settling in?" "So far, so good," I replied, though I'm still trying to figure out if everyone's serious about those rules or if it's just local color for the tourists. Felix glanced at Sophia, then back to me. "The rules are there for good reasons," he said carefully. "We've had incidents when they weren't followed." "What kind of incidents?" I asked. Felix adjusted his glasses. "This isn't the best time to get into that. I have guests checking in soon." His tone was polite but firm. "Sophia can show you the maintenance request system on the computer." As Sophia led me to a small office with a desktop computer, I couldn't help but notice how quickly both she and Felix had shut down any discussion of the rules. It seemed excessive for what was probably just mountain superstition. Sophia showed me how to access and respond to maintenance requests, then checked her watch again. "Dinner's at 6 in the staff dining room. You'll meet the rest of the team then." "Thanks for all your help," I said. "And hey, I didn't mean to make light of the rules. I'll follow them." Sophia's expression softened slightly. "Good. That's all that matters." She hesitated, then added, "The mountains can be dangerous in ways that aren't obvious to newcomers." With that cryptic comment, she left me to familiarize myself with the maintenance request system. I spent the next hour reviewing pending tasks and exploring the maintenance areas accessible with my keys. By the time dinner rolled around, I had a decent grasp of what my job would entail. The work itself seemed straightforward: fixing things, maintaining trails, handling basic upkeep. The people, on the other hand, were proving more complicated. At dinner, I met the rest of the small staff: a couple of housekeepers, a cook, and a groundskeeper. Everyone was friendly enough, but I noticed how conversation steered clear of anything related to the rules or the warnings Chad had given me. As I headed back to my room that night, I pulled out the rules paper again, reading through the odd list. The specificity was what got me, not just general safety advice, but very particular scenarios to avoid. It seemed like the kind of thing you'd make up to scare kids around a campfire. Still, everyone's reactions when I mentioned the rules had been genuine. They truly believed in them, or at least in the need to follow them. I pinned the rules to the small corkboard above my desk, more as a curiosity than anything else. Whatever local legends had spawned these rules, they clearly had a strong hold on the staff here. As I unpacked the last of my things and got ready for bed, I looked out my window at the dark forest beyond the inn. The mountains loomed large and ancient against the night sky, indifferent to the tiny human structure nestled at their feet. Despite the odd rules and the staff's strange reactions, I felt good about this job. After losing my apartment and struggling to find work in Denver, this position, with room and board included, was exactly what I needed. The work was within my skill set, the people seemed decent, and the setting was beautiful. I climbed into bed, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the mountain night. Whatever quirks came with this job, I could handle them. The rules might be weird, but following them was a small price to pay for this fresh start. I took the trail behind the inn during my afternoon break, glad to stretch my legs after 8 days of non-stop work. The maintenance requests had been piling up since I'd started. Leaky faucets, stuck windows, a heating system that seemed to have a mind of its own. This was the first chance I'd had to actually explore the grounds beyond the immediate property. The main path was well maintained, with crushed gravel that crunched satisfyingly under my boots. Pine trees towered on either side, their branches swaying gently in the mountain breeze. I'd gone maybe half a mile when I spotted it, a narrow dirt path veering off to the right, barely visible among the underbrush. I slowed down, curious. It wasn't marked on the trail map Chad had given me during orientation. As I stood there considering, I heard it. "Help, please, somebody help me," a woman's voice high with panic, coming from that unmarked path. My body tensed, instinctively ready to move toward the sound. "I'm hurt. Please, I can't move. Is anyone there?" The voice cracked with desperation. I took one step toward the side path, then froze as my brain caught up with my instincts. Rule number 1. Never respond to voices calling for help from unmarked trails. "Hello, please. I can hear someone. Help me." I gripped the straps of my small backpack tighter, my knuckles turning white. Every instinct screamed at me to help, to at least call back, ask what was wrong. But Chad's serious expression when he handed me that rules paper flashed in my mind. "I'm bleeding. Oh God, please." I swallowed hard and forced myself to keep walking straight ahead on the main path. My steps felt wooden, mechanical. The woman's pleas grew more frantic, more desperate. "Don't leave me here, please. I can't feel my legs." I picked up my pace, not quite running, but moving faster, trying to put distance between myself and that voice. My heart hammered in my chest. What kind of person was I, ignoring someone in trouble? But the staff's reactions whenever I mentioned the rules, there had to be a reason. The cries continued for another minute as I walked away, becoming fainter until they finally faded entirely. The silence that followed felt almost as disturbing as the pleas had been. I finished my hike in a daze, barely noticing the spectacular mountain views that had initially drawn me outside. By the time I returned to the inn, my break was nearly over, but I couldn't shake the unsettled feeling that had settled in my gut. That evening, after finishing my shift, I found Sophia in the staff dining room. She sat alone at the corner table, reviewing schedules on her tablet. I grabbed a cup of coffee and joined her, sliding into the chair across from her. "Hey," I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "Got a minute?" Sophia looked up, offering a tired smile. "Sure. How's the East Wing heater behaving?" "Fixed it this morning. The thermostat was loose." I took a sip of coffee, then set the mug down. "Something happened on the trails today." Her fingers stopped tapping on the tablet. "What kind of something?" I leaned forward, keeping my voice low even though we were alone. "I was hiking the Pineview Trail during my break. There's this unmarked path that branches off about half a mile in, and I heard—" I paused, still disturbed by the memory. "I heard a woman calling for help. She sounded hurt, desperate." Sophia's face drained of color. She set her tablet down completely. "I remembered the first rule and kept walking," I continued. "But it felt wrong, leaving someone who needed help." Sophia reached across the table and gripped my wrist. "You did exactly the right thing, Phoenix." But what if someone was really hurt out there? She shook her head firmly. There wasn't. How can you be sure? I checked the guest registry before my shift. No one was signed out on that trail today except you. Her voice was quiet but intense. No one. A chill ran through me. Then who was calling for help? Sophia released my wrist and sat back in her chair. The mountains have things in them, things that aren't what they seem. She glanced toward the windows, though all that was visible was darkness beyond the glass. You followed the rule. That's what matters. Has this happened before? People hearing voices? Yes, she said simply, not elaborating. Her expression made it clear she didn't want to discuss it further. After a moment, she picked up her tablet again. I need to finish these schedules before tomorrow. Get some rest, Phoenix. I left the dining room with more questions than answers, but at least I knew I'd made the right choice on the trail. That night, I read through the rules again, pinned above my desk. They seemed less arbitrary now, more like survival guidelines. 3 days passed in relative normalcy. I fixed a broken shower head in room 212, replaced some rotting boards on the east deck, and cleared fallen branches from the main driveway after a windy night. The incident on the trail faded somewhat, though I still found myself thinking about it during quiet moments. On my next day off, I decided to try a different trail, Aspen Loop, which wound through a grove of aspen trees before circling back to the inn. The day was clear and cool, perfect for hiking. I'd gone about 2 miles when I saw her. A middle-aged woman stood at a fork in the path, looking confused. She wore hiking clothes, nothing unusual there, but something about her stillness made me hesitate. She turned as I approached. "Excuse me," she called, her voice pleasant and ordinary. "I think I've gotten turned around. Could you point me toward Silver Lake? I'm meeting friends there." Rule number 2 flashed in my mind. Never give directions to anyone encountered on trails. I stopped several feet away from her. "Sorry, I can't help you with directions." Her smile remained fixed, but something shifted in her eyes. "It's just up the mountain, isn't it? I'm sure it's not far. Which path should I take?" "I really can't give you directions," I repeated more firmly this time. My skin prickled with unease. The woman took a step toward me. "It would only take a moment of your time. Just point the way." Her voice remained pleasant, but her eyes weren't blinking. "No," I said, standing my ground. "I can't." She stared at me, her gaze unsettling in its intensity. The smile slowly faded from her face, replaced by an expression I couldn't read. Not anger exactly, but something older and colder. Without another word, she turned and walked off the trail, straight into the trees. I watched, frozen in place, as she moved between 2 pines, and then she simply dissolved. There was a brief shimmer in the air, like heat rising from pavement on a hot day, and then nothing. She was gone. I stood there, my heart pounding in my chest. What I'd just seen wasn't possible. People didn't just disappear into thin air, but she had, and the reality of it hit me like a physical blow. The rules weren't about mountain safety or local superstitions. They were about something else entirely, something I couldn't explain. With shaking hands, I pulled out my water bottle and took a long drink. The forest around me suddenly seemed different, not just trees and rocks and dirt, but something alive and watching. I turned back toward the inn, no longer interested in finishing my hike. As I walked, I kept my eyes firmly on the marked trail, suddenly very grateful for the clear boundaries it provided between where I should and shouldn't be. Whatever existed in these mountains, whatever had just pretended to be a lost hiker, it clearly operated by rules I didn't understand, but I was starting to understand the inn's rules very well indeed. I spotted the old man while checking the trail marker on Fir Ridge. He stood about 20 yards ahead, motionless in the middle of the path, watching me approach. Something about him seemed off right away. His hiking gear looked straight out of the 70s. A faded olive canvas backpack, wool pants tucked into leather boots with red laces, and a flannel shirt that had seen better days decades ago. I kept working, hammering the loose marker post back into place, but kept glancing up at him. He hadn't moved at all, which was weird. Most hikers would wave or at least shift position. This guy just stood there, staring. When I finished securing the marker, I gathered my tools and continued down the trail. The old man smiled as I got closer, revealing teeth that were too white and perfect for someone his age. His skin had a waxy quality in the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. "Beautiful day for a hike," he said, his voice surprisingly strong and clear. "Yeah, it is." I tried to sound casual while keeping my distance. After what I'd seen on the trails these past couple weeks, I wasn't taking any chances. "You work for the inn?" He gestured at my tool belt. "That's right. I didn't offer anything more." The old man's smile widened. "I've been coming to these mountains for 60 years. Know them better than anyone." He pointed to a barely visible game trail veering off to our left. "That path there? It's a shortcut back to the inn, cuts your walk in half." My stomach tightened. Rule number 3. Never accept invitations to explore with guests or strangers. "Thanks, but I'll stick to the marked trail." I adjusted my tool belt, ready to keep moving. "No, really." The old man stepped closer. "I'd be happy to show you. It's quite remarkable. Passes by an old mining cave that few people know about. Historical spot. Appreciate the offer, but I need to finish checking all the markers. Company policy to stay on the main paths." I took a step forward, hoping to pass by him. He moved to block my way, still smiling. "It would only take a few minutes. I've guided many people through these woods. The shortcut is perfectly safe." "No thanks." My voice came out firmer this time. The old man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. They seemed to darken, the blue turning almost black. "Are you sure? The path I'm suggesting would be much more interesting." "I'm sure." I stepped to the side, making it clear I was going around him. For a moment, he didn't move. Then he tilted his head at an odd angle, like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. "Your loss, young man." His voice had changed too, deeper, with a strange, hollow quality. The others were always so curious, so willing to follow. A chill ran down my back. Others, but he was already turning away, walking straight into the forest, not following any path. I watched as he moved between two large pines, his form becoming transparent with each step until he disappeared completely with that same strange shimmer I'd seen before, like heat rising from pavement on a hot day. I stood frozen, my heart pounding. That was the second time I'd seen someone literally vanish into thin air. This wasn't just weird mountain folklore anymore. Something seriously wrong was happening here, and I needed answers. I finished my work as quickly as possible and headed back to the inn, my mind racing the whole way. Every sound in the forest made me jump. Every shadow seemed to move. By the time the wooden structure of Pine Ridge came into view, I'd made up my mind. I was going to confront Chad. Back at the inn, I showered and changed, then went looking for the owner. Felix at the front desk told me Chad was in his office doing paperwork. I found him sitting behind his desk, surrounded by invoices and schedules, a cup of coffee gone cold at his elbow. I knocked on the open door. "Got a minute?" Chad looked up, his weathered face showing mild surprise. "Phoenix, come in." I closed the door behind me and sat in the chair across from his desk. "We need to talk about what's happening on those trails." Chad leaned back, his expression unreadable. "What do you think is happening?" "I think there's something out there that isn't normal." I leaned forward. "Today, I met an old man who tried to get me to follow him down an unmarked path. When I refused, he walked into the forest and literally disappeared, vanished into thin air with this weird shimmer. And it's not the first time I've seen something like that." Chad was silent for a long moment, studying me. Then he sighed and opened his desk drawer. He pulled out a small leather-bound book and placed it on the desk between us. "How many have you seen?" he asked quietly. "Two that vanished, plus a woman's voice calling for help from an unmarked trail my first week here." Chad nodded slowly. "And you followed the rules each time?" "Yes." He tapped his fingers on the book. "Most people who come to work here either leave within the first month or stay for years. The ones who leave either can't handle what they see or don't believe it's real. The ones who stay learn to live with it." "Live with what exactly?" I pressed. "What are those things?" Chad ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. "The mountains have inhabitants that aren't quite human, Phoenix. They've been here long before the inn, long before any of us. They can take human form, but they're not people." "What are they, then?" "I don't know what to call them." Chad's voice was matter-of-fact. "Some old-timers around here have names for them. Tricksters, mimics, forest walkers. I just know they're particularly attracted to people who break the rules we've established." My mouth felt dry. "What happens to people who do? Break the rules, I mean." Chad's eyes met mine, and the seriousness in them made my skin crawl. "Best case? Nothing. Sometimes they just get scared." He paused. "Worst case? They vanish completely, or they're found with significant memory loss, unable to recall anything about themselves or how they got here." "And the worst case?" I asked, already knowing there was more. "They turn up dead." Chad said it flatly. "Usually at the bottom of ravines or in caves. The official cause is always accidental. Exposure, falls, that sort of thing. But the rangers who find them say the bodies often have inconsistencies." "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Injuries that don't match the supposed accidents, strange marks, missing items, things that don't add up." Chad opened the leather book and turned it toward me. "This is a record I've kept of every incident I know about going back 30 years, since my father owned the place." I looked down at the neat handwriting. Each entry included a date, name, which rule was broken, and the outcome. Too many entries ended with the word deceased. "Jesus," I whispered. "Now you understand." Chad closed the book. "The rules aren't superstition or arbitrary guidelines. They're survival protocols. We're living in a place where the normal world touches something else, something we don't understand. The rules keep us safe." I thought about the old man on the trail, his perfect teeth and that unnatural stillness. "Why don't you warn people more clearly? Why all the mystery?" "Would you have believed me if I'd told you all this your first day?" Chad asked. "Or would you have thought I was crazy and either ignored the rules or quit immediately?" He had a point. I wouldn't have believed any of this if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. "So what do we do?" I asked. "We follow the rules. We stay on marked paths. We don't engage with them." Chad put the book back in his drawer. "And we warn the new staff the best way we can, hoping they'll be smart enough to listen even if they don't understand why at first." I sat back in my chair, trying to process everything. The supernatural was real, and it was living right outside our doors. The trails I walked daily were borders between our world and something else, something dangerous that wanted to lure people away. "Does everyone who works here know?" I asked. "Everyone who stays long enough figures it out one way or another." Chad looked tired suddenly. "Sophia's been here 5 years. Felix almost 8. They've both had their encounters." I thought about Sophia's reaction when I told her about the voice on the trail, how she'd grabbed my wrist. It made sense now. "So we just live with it?" I asked. Chad nodded. "That's all we can do. This place, this inn, it's a good living for all of us, and as long as we follow the rules, we're safe." I wasn't sure if I felt better or worse after our conversation. On one hand, I finally had confirmation that I wasn't imagining things. On the other, I now knew for certain that there were unknown dangers lurking just beyond the marked paths, entities that could look human but weren't, things that might want to harm us. As I left Chad's office, I looked out the window toward the forest. The mountains looked the same as they always had. Beautiful, majestic, peaceful. But now I knew better. Now I understood that beneath that beauty was something ancient and dangerous, something watching and waiting for someone to break the rules. I made a critical mistake by staying late to fix a broken water pipe. The main line had burst near the east hiking trail, flooding the path and threatening to wash out part of the trail before morning if left unchecked. What should have been a quick fix turned into a 3-hour ordeal of digging, cutting, and replacing a section of pipe that had corroded from the inside out. Almost done, I muttered to myself, tightening the last coupling with my wrench. The sun had already dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky in deep purples and blues. I'd lost track of time, focused on the repair. I packed my tools into my backpack, wiped the mud from my hands onto my jeans, and looked around. The forest had transformed in the fading light. The familiar trail now seemed foreign, the trees casting long shadows across the path. I pulled out my flashlight and switched it on. The beam cut through the growing darkness, illuminating the path ahead. I started walking, my boots crunching on the gravel. The night air felt cooler than I expected, sending a chill down my spine. Halfway back to the inn, I heard it, footsteps matching mine exactly. When I took a step, another followed precisely in rhythm. When I paused, the sound stopped too. Perfect synchronization. My heart jumped. Rule 5 flashed in my mind. If walking after sunset, never look behind you regardless of sounds heard. I kept my eyes forward, fixed on the path ahead. The footsteps continued, mirroring my every movement with unnerving precision. One step, another step followed. Faster pace, faster steps behind. Then I felt it. Warm breath on the back of my neck. The hairs on my arms stood up. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around to confront whatever was there. But I remembered Chad's book. The names, the outcomes, deceased. I gripped my flashlight tighter and maintained my forward gaze. The presence behind me grew more oppressive with each step. The footsteps became heavier, no longer matching mine but landing with a weight that seemed impossible for any normal hiker. The smell hit me next, a thick, cloying odor of decay, like something long dead but somehow still moving. It filled my nostrils and coated the back of my throat, making me want to gag. My hands trembled as I clutched my flashlight. The beam wobbled across the path, making the shadows dance. I quickened my pace but forced myself not to run. Something told me running would make it worse, like it would trigger a chase response. The breathing behind me grew louder, more animalistic. No longer human-like but ragged and hungry. It came in wet, rasping gulps that seemed to fill the entire forest around me. "Keep walking. Don't look back," I whispered to myself, the words barely audible over the sound of my own heartbeat in my ears. My neck tingled with the certainty that something was inches away, studying me, waiting for me to break the rule. My fingers went numb from gripping the flashlight so tightly. Sweat ran down my back despite the cool night air. The thing behind me made a low, gurgling sound, almost like speech but twisted and wrong. I bit down hard on my lower lip, using the pain to focus my mind away from the overwhelming urge to turn around. Just when I thought I might break, might spin around and face whatever horror tracked me through the dark, I saw them, the warm yellow lights of Pine Ridge Inn appearing between the trees ahead. Relief washed over me, but I didn't slow down. The presence pressed closer, the breathing now directly in my ear. The smell of rot became overwhelming. 20 more yards, 15, 10. I crossed the property line and suddenly, nothing. The footsteps stopped. The breathing vanished. The putrid smell disappeared as if it had never existed. The oppressive weight lifted from the air around me. I burst through the front doors of the inn, gasping for breath. My legs gave out, and I collapsed onto the nearest chair in the lobby, my whole body shaking. My clothes were soaked with sweat, my muscles aching from the tension. Felix looked up from the front desk, his eyes widening when he saw my state. He quickly came around the counter and approached me. "You were out after dark," he said, not a question. I nodded, still trying to catch my breath. Water pipe on the East Trail took longer than I expected. Felix sat in the chair across from me. "You didn't look back." "No," I managed to say. "Rule 5, never look behind you after sunset." Felix's expression grew somber. He removed his reading glasses and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Claire Norton broke that rule 5 years ago." I looked up at him, my breathing finally steadying. "Claire? She worked maintenance like you. Good at her job. Smart." Felix leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "She was walking back from checking the property line markers. Got caught after sunset. We think she heard the footsteps, felt the presence behind her." "And she looked back," I said quietly. Felix nodded. "She was missing for 3 days. We found her at the bottom of Black Rock Ravine, 2 miles off the main trail." The lobby felt suddenly colder. "What happened to her?" "Officially? A hiking accident. She fell," they said. Felix's voice grew tight. "But the injuries, they weren't right. Her body was twisted in ways that couldn't happen from just falling. Her eyes—" He stopped, shaking his head. "The medical examiner couldn't explain it. Said he'd never seen anything like it in 30 years on the job." I sat there, taking in what he was telling me. The thing that had followed me could have done the same to me if I'd broken the rule. "The rules keep us alive," Felix said, standing up. "What's out there? It's patient. It waits for mistakes." He put his hand on my shoulder. "You did good tonight, Phoenix. You followed the rule." I nodded, still feeling the phantom sensation of breath on my neck. "I need a shower," I said, standing up on still shaky legs. Felix gave me a sympathetic look. "The feeling will pass. By morning it'll seem less real. But don't let that fool you into thinking it wasn't." I headed up the back staircase to the staff quarters, each step an effort. My mind kept replaying the sounds, the smell, the feeling of being hunted. Claire Norton had turned around and paid with her life. I had followed the rules and survived. As I reached my room, I couldn't shake the image Felix's story had put in my head. A broken body at the bottom of a ravine with injuries no fall could cause. I pushed open my door and flicked on the light, suddenly grateful for the small, ordinary space with its twin bed and simple furnishings. The rules paper was still pinned to my corkboard. I stared at Rule 5, understanding now why it existed. Not as a suggestion or a precaution, but as the thin line between life and death in this place where reality seemed to have different rules. I settled into a routine at Pine Ridge Inn over the next month, learning to manage the supernatural encounters by strictly following the rules. Morning maintenance checks, afternoon trail work, evening repairs. The rhythm of these tasks became as familiar as breathing. The strange phenomena I'd encountered, voices calling from unmarked paths, people who dissolved between trees, things that followed in the darkness, remained a constant presence, but they'd become predictable hazards of the job, like watching for loose floorboards or checking for electrical shorts. Each day brought its own collection of small oddities. Sometimes I'd notice unnatural stillness in the forest, or catch glimpses of figures watching from between trees who vanished when I blinked. Once, I found footprints on a trail that started from nowhere and ended just as abruptly. But as long as I stuck to the 5 rules, these things remained at a safe distance, observable but not threatening. The other staff maintained their practiced silence about the supernatural aspects of our workplace. Sophia would check in occasionally with a simple, "Everything okay on the trails?" Felix would glance up when I returned from late work with a knowing look. We'd developed an unspoken language around the strange occurrences. A nod, a meaningful glance, a subtle warning when something seemed off. I was cleaning gutters on the west side of the inn when Chad's truck pulled into the gravel lot, kicking up dust in the late afternoon sun. The passenger door opened and a young guy stepped out, looking up at the wooden structure of Pine Ridge Inn with an expression that reminded me of my own arrival. a mix of relief and uncertainty. He grabbed a duffel bag and backpack from the truck bed while Chad retrieved a cardboard box. I climbed down from the ladder and walked over as they entered the building. By the time I made it inside, Chad was already at the front desk with the new arrival, who looked about 23, with black hair and rectangular glasses that gave him a scholarly appearance. His clothes, a button-down shirt and khaki pants, looked too clean and new for maintenance work. "Phoenix," Chad called when he saw me. "This is Shane Bridges, our new maintenance worker. Shane, this is Phoenix Foster. He's been handling everything alone since Miguel left." Shane extended his hand with a smile. "Nice to meet you. Guess we'll be working together." I shook his hand, noting the lack of calluses. "Welcome aboard. You picked a good time to start. We've got a full house coming in for the long weekend." Chad nodded. "Phoenix can show you the ropes tomorrow. For now, let's get you settled." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his shirt pocket, the same rules paper I'd received my first day. "Before anything else, there are some important guidelines you need to follow while working here." Shane took the paper, unfolded it, and read silently. His expression shifted from interest to confusion to amusement. When he finished, he looked up with a half smile. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. "Never respond to voices calling for help? Never look behind you after sunset? Sounds like campfire stories to scare the new guy." Chad's face remained completely serious, the same stone expression he'd given me when I'd questioned the rules. "These aren't suggestions, Shane. They're requirements for working here." Shane glanced between us, his smile fading slightly when neither of us broke into laughter. "Right. Okay. So this is like a tradition thing? Team building exercise?" I stepped forward. "Follow the rules exactly, Shane. They'll keep you alive." Shane's smile disappeared completely, replaced by uncertainty as he looked at me more carefully. "Keep me alive? Come on, that's a bit dramatic, isn't it?" "Phoenix isn't exaggerating," Chad said quietly. "Every single one of those rules exists because someone died breaking it." Shane looked down at the paper again, his expression now caught between disbelief and concern. "You guys are serious about this?" "Dead serious," I said. "I've seen what happens when the rules are broken. Trust me, you don't want to find out firsthand." Chad handed Shane a set of keys. "Room 12, third floor. Phoenix will show you up." I picked up Shane's box while he grabbed his bags. As we headed toward the back staircase, Shane kept glancing at the rules paper in his hand. "So what is this really about?" he asked in a low voice once we were out of Chad's earshot. "Some kind of hazing ritual? Or is there actually something dangerous in these mountains?" "Both, in a way," I said as we climbed the narrow stairs. "The mountains are dangerous, but not in the way you'd expect. Not bears or exposure or getting lost. Something else entirely." "Like what? Escaped convicts? Drug operations? What?" I paused on the landing, turning to look at him directly. "Things that aren't human but can look like they are. Things that wait for you to break the rules so they can get to you." Shane stared at me for a long moment. "You can't be serious." "I wish I wasn't." I continued up the stairs. "Your first week, you'll see something that doesn't make sense. Someone who appears or disappears impossibly. A voice that couldn't possibly be human. And if you follow the rules, you'll live to tell about it." We reached the third floor, and I led him down the hallway to room 12, 3 doors down from my own. The room was identical to mine. Twin bed, desk, dresser, and a window overlooking the forest. "Bathrooms shared, 2 doors down," I said, setting the box on his desk. "Staff meals are at 7, 12, and 6. The maintenance shed is behind the inn. I'll show you tomorrow morning." Shane set his bags on the bed, still holding the rules paper. "So everyone here believes this? About non-human things in the forest?" "It's not about believing," I said. "It's about seeing. And you will see sooner or later." I pointed to the corkboard above his desk. Pin those rules up where you'll see them every day. Read them before you go out. Memorize them. And if I don't, if I think this is all bullshit, then you'll probably end up like Claire Norton or the others in Chad's book. I moved toward the door. Dinner's at 6. I'd suggest unpacking and resting until then. As I turned to leave, I realized something that hadn't occurred to me until that moment. In explaining the rules to Shane, in taking the role of the experienced worker warning the newcomer, I had unconsciously decided to stay at Pine Ridge Inn permanently. When I'd arrived, I'd thought of this as temporary, a job to get me back on my feet after losing my apartment in Denver. But somewhere along the line, that had changed. I paused in the doorway. The rules sound crazy at first, I know. I didn't believe them either. But once you see what's out there, you'll understand. Shane nodded slowly, his skepticism still evident but tempered with uncertainty. I guess I'll find out. Yes, I said. You will. I left him to settle in and walked to my own room, thinking about how my perspective had shifted. Despite the constant supernatural dangers lurking beyond the inn's boundaries, I had learned to navigate them safely. The job itself was straightforward, fixing things, maintaining trails, helping guests, and the pay was decent. Room and board came with the position, and the isolation, which might have bothered some people, suited me fine. I sat at my desk and looked out my window at the mountain trails winding into the forest. The setting sun cast long shadows between the trees, creating dark spaces where anything might hide. A month ago, that thought would have terrified me. Now it was simply a fact of life, like knowing certain neighborhoods in Denver were dangerous after dark. The strangeness had become familiar, even comforting in its way. I knew the rules. I knew the boundaries. As long as I respected both, I could exist safely in this place where two worlds overlapped. Tomorrow I would walk those trails again, vigilant but no longer afraid of the world that existed on the edge of two realities. I remembered my first encounter on the unmarked trail, the woman's voice calling for help, the desperate pleas that had nearly pulled me off the safe path. That memory still sent a chill through me, but it was distant now, like remembering a close call on a highway. The once terrifying phenomena had transformed into just another aspect of my daily life at Pine Ridge. I looked at the rules paper pinned to my corkboard, the edges slightly curled from humidity, 5 simple guidelines that separated life from death. I had found an unexpected peace in this bizarre balance I'd struck between the normal and paranormal. The rules created a framework, a structure within which I could safely navigate this strange corner of the world. Outside my window, the forest darkened as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. In the growing shadows, I thought I saw movement between distant trees, a figure watching the inn, waiting for someone to break the rules. I didn't look away or close the curtains. I simply acknowledged its presence, the way you might nod to a neighbor across the street. We had an understanding now, the forest and I.